Another beautiful day driving from here to there. I listened to a great video this morning. It reminded me of something that happened, 36 years ago. I was working with a guy named George, and George was quite a character. He had been a radio operator in Lancaster bombers in the Second World War. And he had some pretty interesting experiences, and like a lot of guys that have been over there and done that and got a medal or two and a t-shirt or three, he didn't talk a lot about his experiences in the bomber, flying the missions and that, but he had some wonderful stories of his adventures as a young man in London on leave. And it was interesting because George was also proud of saying, I went in at 18, I came out at 18, and I was in for 4 years. That's right, he didn't quite tell the truth when he joined up, but there's a lot of stories about that. If you want to look up some history of Canada and the US. Anyways, we were working on a custom home, trimming it out. I was a young carpenter at the time. And we had this young guy working with us that summer. He was, 16, 17. I guess that doesn't really matter, but he was a young guy. And he was one of those guys that it didn't matter what you said, he had a better story. And I could understand, I guess, for someone like myself who was still, I look back now thinking I was still a young kid or a young man, 26 or 7 at the time. But with someone like George, who was, former radio operator in a Lancaster bomber in the Second World War, who'd survived 3 crews, a little bit of lifetime experience going on there. Anyways, one day we're having coffee in the morning and George is telling us a story about one of his exploits with a young lady at nighttime, if you know what I mean, nudge nudge, wink wink. And he had no sooner finished the story and this young kid starts going on about some baloney story of his adventures. And I could tell George has had enough. Now I figured what was going to happen is George was going to go back to the office at the end of the day and talk to the boss, and that'd be the last we see that kid on the job site. But no, he had something a little better in mind. 45 minutes after break, I hear George grumbling in the other room where we had the saw station set up. And then I hear some crashes, some trim on the ground. And I'm thinking, that's not like him at all. There's something really weird going on here. So I go in the other room and he's got a big grin on his face and he gives me a nudge and a sort of a wink and a nod and puts his hands up to his lips like, for me to keep quiet. And sure enough, in comes the kid because he's curious. He's got to know what's going on. And that's when George started his real theatrics. And he started going on about, I cut this trim too short. No, we're going to be short now, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And I can't believe I made such a rookie mistake. And he's going on like Academy Award. Well, he stops for a second. He says, you know what? I think it's probably long enough. You know what? And he looks at the young kid and he says, go up to my truck. And up in my truck, you're going to see a long thing, about 3 feet long. It's got clamps on either end. It's got a big red handle. He says, I got it years ago from an old carpenter. He says, it's a red-handled board stretcher. And I almost lost it right then and there, but off the kid goes. 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, 15, 20 minutes later, he comes back. George, I couldn't find it anywhere. I looked all through the back of your truck. Well, now I'm firmly entrenched in the shenanigans, so I look at George and say, well, I got that blue-handled one. It's not nearly as good as the old one you got, but I said, head up to my truck, and I got the same thing as George's, only it's got a blue handle on it. Well, he was gone for 15 minutes that time and came back. Of course, he never did find them. Because a board stretcher you keep in the toolbox with your bucket of steam and your skyhook. When he finally clued into what was going on, he humbled himself for A couple of days. Didn't last too long. He was back to his old self. But my point is this. If you are so lucky to be in the presence of somebody who's been there and done that and got the t-shirt, and they are willing to impart on you their wisdom and knowledge or experience, especially for the guys that have done the real hard things, that don't really like talking about it because they don't need to, because they got the t-shirt. They don't need to brag about it. If they're willing to give you a bit of their time, shut your mouth, open your ears, and you might learn something. Do not be the one they send to go looking for a red-handled board stretcher. Have a great day.